Bring in now Adele Raemer, who is a survivor of the attack on the Kibbutz Nirim. Adele, thank you very much for joining us here in France 24. We appreciate your time. And I'm wondering what thoughts you have on this very, well, I think it is a dark anniversary, isn't it? A dark anniversary, 1 year on since the attack.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. We also had our own ceremony on my kibbutz. I live on Kibbutz Nirim. And we had our own very personal, very, very communal service to commemorate the year since our lives have been turned upside down, and literally nothing looks the same as it did a year and a day ago.
Did you think, Adele, that there would still be this war going on right now?
If you had told me that, can you see the number on my shirt?
367.
367 days later, we would still have our hostages, 101 of them, in the bowels of Gaza, that we would still be refugees in our own home. I'm not in my home. I'm in an apartment in Beersheba. I can't go home. I would never have dreamed that it would last this long. Usually, Israel is used to short wars. Israel does well with short wars. Long wars, I don't think there's ever been a war this long. And it's a major challenge. But in my community, we're optimistic. 5 people from my community were murdered. 5 people were kidnapped. 3 of the kidnapped people were women, and they were released late November. And the 2 men tragically were executed in the terror tunnels of Gaza. So we're just looking forward now. And we're trying to preserve community, which as a kibbutz, that's the most important thing. A kibbutz is so much more than just the fields and the buildings. Kibbutz is community. So we're working really hard on building community. I've just come back from a 27-day speaking tour trying to raise money for my community to rebuild our homes, because we have to build bigger and better and safer and stronger in order to convince the young families to come back, to bring new families in. So we have our work cut out for us, but we're optimistic and we're strong, and we will do it.
Adele, it's very clear that you have great resolve and that you have great strength of character. And I can see in your face that you're a very human person as well. I'm wondering, with what you've seen and what you've been through, how you cope with processing that. But also I'm wondering how you feel about the fact that so many Palestinians, in the year that's elapsed, so many Palestinian deaths have resulted because of Israel's bombardment of the Gaza Strip. We're getting up to now nearly 42,000 Palestinian dead. How do you feel about that?
Every death of an innocent is tragic and horrible and shouldn't happen. But where's the world? How many lives on both sides of this conflict could have been saved if the world had stood up on October 8th and said, enough, let those people back, free those hostages, all of those hostages, 251 hostages, men, women, children, elderly, babies. How many lives could have been saved if the world had made the terrorists give these people back? What's going on both sides is horrible. What's going on on the Gazan side is terrible. They could have had the Singapore of the Middle East when we pulled out in 2005, and they got all of this money from all of the different countries in the world. And what did they do with it? Instead of building high-rise buildings and institutions for learning and hospitals, they built an entire city just for the purpose of terror underneath their grounds. So it's horrific, but when you use innocent people as hostages, innocent Gazans as human shields, Are we supposed to just say, oh, okay, we'll just not do anything? You just slaughtered 1,200 of our people and kidnapped over 240 of our people. We'll just let that slide because we don't want to harm civilians.
Adele, you've made. I'm sorry to cut across you, Adele, because what you're saying is incredibly interesting. But you've made a really important distinction, I think, between the terrorists, Hamas, and that representative, and the ordinary people. And those ordinary people, I think, as you've already said, would want peace, would want this to end. At the beginning of the whole conflict, Antonio Guterres of the United Nations, he said that this didn't happen in a bubble. He was implying that what Israel had done in terms of how the Gaza Strip is policed, in a sense, how it's all closed in, has led to what those Hamas terrorists did. Would you have anything to say about that?
Would you ask somebody from Egypt that as well?
I hear what you're saying. Please carry on.
So the reason why the Gaza, that piece of land that's called Gaza, was closed off so well, not even hermetically. The reason why it was closed off was because of terror. Thousands of Gazans had work permits and were coming into Israel and working and bringing money back into Gaza, albeit they had to pay a large chunk of that money to the Hamas for the privilege of being able to go out and work in Israel. But they were able to put food on their table and feed and clothe their children. Egypt has as much responsibility of closing off Gaza as we do. They could have opened their sides of the border and people could have gone in and out freely. And, you know, when I turned around on October 7th and saw the pictures of those terrorists coming in with flak jackets and helmets and advanced weapons, that's not a hermetically sealed area of land. They were getting plenty coming in. They were getting everything they needed. Unfortunately, everything they brought in was turned to terror and turned against us.
Indeed, Adele, and can I say that no one, certainly not in this studio, would justify or seek to justify what Hamas did. It cannot be justified. It was an atrocity. It was horrific. And clearly, people should be held to account for that. Leaders of Hamas first and foremost. I'm wondering how you see the future now, Adele, because clearly this war it looks like it's set to continue. A solution doesn't seem to be anywhere on the horizon. The war in many ways appears to be spreading. Obviously, what we're seeing in Lebanon, we're seeing rockets being fired by the Houthi rebels from Yemen towards Israel. Clearly, this is being stoked from different sides. I'm wondering how you're feeling about the future. Do you feel that, say, for instance, some kind of two-state solution has to be the way forward? Are you against that? Where would you stand? Can you share that with us?
So I've always been in favor of a two-state solution. And I think the majority of Israelis were in favor of a two-state solution. But if you give a two-state solution now, you're just rewarding terror. And God forbid that should happen. Because what message is that sending to the terrorists? Go kidnap people, go murder people, and you'll get whatever you want? Unfortunately, the time of two-state solution passed. Now we have to do this war and get the job done. And then hopefully in the future, with re-education, like the Allies did in Germany, in Japan, re-educating, re-teaching the people of those countries. Gazans, the Hamas have been doing an excellent job of educating their population to hate. That education has to be re-educated and re-changed, and they have to be taught, and that's not something that Israel can do. This has to be outside forces. Moderate Arab countries, and there are those. Other European countries, if they're willing to step in or step up. But there needs to be a re-education done, and then after that, There can be diplomatic solutions. There can be a two-state solution. And hopefully someday, I don't know if I will live to see it, but hopefully my grandchildren will live to see people living next to each other in peace and working together, cooperating.
I think many of us would share that same opinion of yours, Adele, that was so well expressed. Can I ask you about Benjamin Netanyahu? He's spoken to the official commemoration ceremony that's been taking place. He's described the Israeli people as the chosen people who will continue to fight so long as hostages are held, so long as citizens aren't able to return to their homes. He may be referring perhaps to you with that phrase. I'm wondering whether you feel, as he says, that the 7th of October was a day of rebirth for Israel, or whether, like some people, you feel that he's kind of, well, he's not handled this at all well. He's in fact been in some way to blame for the fact that this has been prolonged and continues to be very much a difficult situation, to say the least, for all concerned.
I'd rather not get into politics.
Understood.
Certainly not on an international channel.
I understand. I had to ask you, though. I had to ask you, is there? Do you forgive me?
Good try.
Well, I had to ask you because it's kind of impossible to speak to someone in your position and not put the question. And I fully respect the fact that you don't want to talk about that, Adele. I'll leave that there. But can I come back to that rebuilding question? Because on a personal level, you've spoken about the desire to have peace, the desire to get things going, and to sort of, look to, I don't know, mend fences, create relationships with moderate Palestinians. Ordinary Palestinians also want peace. But I'm wondering how we get there. You've mentioned a call for international help in that sense. Do you think the will is there?
On whose side?
Well, on both. Let's say on both sides. Israeli and Palestinian.
I can promise you that on the Israeli side it is there.
Okay.
I can also tell you that I have in the past been in touch with Palestinians, with Arabs from Gaza, who do believe that there could be a different way to raise children, a different way to live in this area. And I've given hundreds of talks and tours on my kibbutz before October 7th. And I always used to end up at the west side of the gate, at the west fence, overlooking Gaza, just a mile away, and telling them, I'm sure that the vast majority of the people on the other side of that fence just want the same thing that I do: food on their table, clothing for their children, education for their children. Unfortunately, after October 7th, I fear I got my numbers wrong. But I do believe that if we are able to make a change, getting moderates into Gaza from outside, that they will be able to take these people who were working towards collaboration and cooperation and teaching children other things, that they will be able to use them to raise them up. I always used to tell these people, you're my light, you're my candle, you're my bright light for the future, my bright hope for the future. Unfortunately, most of those people were hunted down by the Hamas. So first of all, we have to get rid of the Hamas. Then we can talk.
Adele Raemer, thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us and answering the questions that I put to you. That's Adele Raemer, who is a survivor of the attack on the Kibbutz Nirim, joining us from Beersheba, not able to return to her home, of course, but hoping one day to do that and to resettle and to continue to build towards peace. Adele, thank you for joining us here in France 24. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Adele Raemer there.